Hi, welcome to All About the Good Stuff, where today I'm talking to you about mindfulness. What is it? Why is it important? And can it perhaps help you and even your children? Now, if I was to ask you what mindfulness was, quite often I found it to be the case that people have these images of having to be doing yoga or meditating in a serene landscape and being completely still and clearing your mind. This couldn't be further from the truth of how accessible mindfulness actually is. So I'll start at the beginning. Mindfulness simply means awareness. It's just another way for saying awareness. It's about bringing yourself back to right now and not thinking about what happened yesterday or what happened tomorrow. I always, explain it as sort of a timeline. So if you think of a timeline, it's about bringing yourself back right to the middle of that line, okay? So actually it's relatively simple because it can be integrated in how you live your life right now anyway. So whether that's driving, if you're driving somewhere, you can be mindful while you're driving. I mean, how many of us have driven somewhere and gone, oh my God, how did I even get here? You go on literal autopilot or auto driver. So in that situation, it's about bringing yourself to what you can sense right then. So while you're driving, noticing how your hands feel on the steering wheel, opening your eyes and looking around. Especially if it's somewhere that you go quite often. I started doing this. I started actually using my sight to stay mindful and looking around, and I started noticing things that I'd never noticed before, like, oh, when did they build that building? So my driving is one example. Another example is making a cup of tea or coffee. It's a pretty brainless task. You put the kettle on and you pour the water in and you put the tea bag in or whatever you're making, and it's so easy for your mind to just escape from the present moment. And so with something like that, for example, you can hear the sound of filling up the kettle with the water. You can hear the sound of the click. You can hear the sound as the kettle boils. You can hear the sound as it clicks again. While you're waiting for it to boil, can you focus on exactly what's happening then in your body? So your breath, I'll come back to this in a second when I talk about the kids, but the breath is phenomenal at helping you be mindful, and it's free and it's always there. Then can you smell the taste of the smell of the coffee taste? Can you smell the smell of the tea that you're making or whatever it is? So it's all about just coming back to now. And no, you don't have to carve out 30 minutes of your time and dedicate that time specifically to being mindful, not at all. And in fact, it's actually much more effective to integrate it into what you do already. But why would you want to be mindful? Okay, I've talked about how you can do it. Why would you want to? Well, number one, if you are somebody who tends to have anxious thoughts, or you're somebody that suffers from anxiety, anxious thoughts they live in the future. So they're thoughts that it's a little bit further than worry, although mindfulness can help if you're a worrier as well. But when you're having anxious thoughts, it's about, oh gosh, what if this was to happen, and what if this were to happen, and thinking about sort of worst case scenarios. And I think a lot of people can relate. I can relate. I don't necessarily suffer from anxiety in a clinical way, but I've been there before, where your mind tends to take over and spiral. So what you want to do is take back control, because your mind, you can change your thoughts. And doesn't it feel better to not be stuck in a negative future? So it really helps you to stay present and help your body to relax and recognize that all you have are the facts of now and not what's happening next. So in the same way that it helps you come back from the future, it also can help bring you back from the past, because that's another thing. We tend to ruminate. So ruminating just means thinking about the same thing over and over again. We tend to overthink things that have happened, particularly if they're negative situations. So if you're going to keep thinking about positive stuff, do it, because positive psychology is all about building up the positive emotions. It feels good to remember good things that have happened. Doesn't feel so good to think about negative things that have happened. Perhaps it was a situation where you felt embarrassed or ashamed or disappointed, or perhaps a failure, right? Or sadness. And you know, it goes without saying that thinking about these things are going to perpetuate those negative emotions, and nobody actually wants to feel that way. Yes, our brains are actually wired to focus on negative situations, but that's purely from a survival perspective, so that we're able to figure out what to stay away from. But most of us watching, if not all of us, don't need that survival instinct as we did hundreds and thousands of years ago. So the good news is that you can actually rewire your brain. So just as you would, you know, go to the gym to do some weight training and exercise your muscles, the same way goes for the brain, for the mind. Do it regularly and you will find that it comes really easily. And that's the key, is that you have to do it regularly. So when you're stuck in the past, it's also, mindfulness can be really helpful to bring you back and recognize again that you don't have control over the past. It's done, it's gone. What you have control over is, you know, if you're really stuck there, okay, those are the facts, that's how I felt. I don't want to feel that way anymore. What can I take out of that situation to avoid that happening in the future? What can I do differently? Because you can't control anybody else's responses. Could I react differently to something that somebody's told me? Could I say something differently? Could I speak up? Could I not speak up? Whatever it is. So mindfulness is all about being aware in right now to avoid getting pulled into the past or into the future. Okay. Now I spoke about the breath a minute ago, so parents, the parents that are watching, I'm going to take a deep breath right now. Parenting is not an easy road. Sure, it's full of positive emotions, it's full of joy, it's full of happiness, and it can be smooth sailing, but there are times when you're thrown off guard. There are times when you feel like you're in a phase of low and you just can't get a handle on it. Why is my kid exploding? Why is my child angry? Why don't they just listen to what I have to say? So in those moments, it's important to remember that you, as much as you want to, or your parents told you you should, or society tells you it's the right way to parent, you cannot control your child's behavior in a way that is actually going to be helpful for them positively. Now hear me out, because I think that might be a little bit controversial. You need to really know what your intentions are for raising your child, because yes, you do know better than them in most situations. However, there will be situations where you're going to need to let go again of that control. So first of all, really get tuned in with what you want for your child. And you know, ultimately that means, for most parents, you want them to be happy. So when you're in a particular incident where you feel those emotions of anger or disappointment or frustration coming up, remember what your intentions are for your child and act accordingly. Make your choices accordingly. How do I speak to my child now to make sure that those feelings that I want for them still happen? And this is whether or not they have broken a rule or done something that you feel is disrespectful. This is about you taking control of what you can and helping your child at the same time. Now, if it's really, really hard, step away, please, because you don't want to be in the position where you're feeling guilty or regretful later on for something that you said or did. So step away and have a mindful moment of your own. And here's where the breath comes in. You can just take however many deep breaths that you need to and be totally aware of them. So that's taking the deep breath in and out and doing what you need to do to actually be aware of yourself, breathing, and not be doing the deep breaths and going "ah" at the same time. So it's feeling, for example, feeling the air coming in through your nostrils or your mouth, noticing that feeling. It's noticing where in your body you can feel that rise and fall. Is it your chest, your shoulders, your belly? It's putting your feet on the floor and noticing the feeling there. What you're doing by taking these deep breaths, these mindful breaths, is sending a signal to your body to relax, that there's no immediate life or death threat. And so then you're able to parent from a place that's a lot more calm and a lot more peaceful. So that's what you can do in a situation where you feel like it's overflowing and you can't really come out of the emotion right away. And you can say to your kid, like, look, I'm feeling really angry right now, and I need to step away and take some deep breaths, and I will come back to you. Then when you do come back, being mindful in that interaction with your parent, with your child, sorry. So that's getting down onto their level. Number one, getting down onto their level so you can see, you can look into their eyes and use your sight. Turn your ears on. This is what I tell my kids, turn your listening ears on. But you know, in all honesty, this is really important, because oftentimes we don't actually listen to our children. We hear them, but we're not mindfully listening. So that means putting aside our automatic responses. You know, we're always ready to, you know, respond to what the child has said, but that's not helpful for you or for them. So really listen to what they're saying and respond to the emotion behind what they're saying, and it will be so much easier once you've taken those deep breaths anyway. When it comes to mindfulness with your children themselves, so the breath, here's the magic breath. This is how I work with children introducing mindfulness, because the breath is an amazing anchor. As you just see now, it can work for you in so many situations, but it's there for them. It's easy for them to understand. I would recommend that you practice mindfulness with your child outside of high intensity moments, outside of moments where the emotions are high, so that when they are in that situation, which they will be because we're humans and it happens, when they are in that situation, that they've already exercised their mind to be able to respond automatically. Or for you to just give them a simple nudge and reminder to take a breath, and they know what that means, and they know that the feeling that comes out of it is one that they want. So in a neutral zone or a happy zone, you're going to practice this mindfulness. And for younger kids especially, it's helpful for you can ask them to put their hand on their belly or on your belly, so that this is an interaction and it becomes something fun and a together experience. Put their hand on their belly, or lie down flat on their back and put one of their favorite soft toys on their belly, and just take breaths and just breathe. And the way to help them be mindful is to ask them to watch their hand as it moves in and out, and perhaps ask them, oh, if you take a deeper breath like this, will it move even higher? And then with the teddy or whatever it is that they've decided to put on, they can actually move. You can ask them to breathe in such a way that they're moving their toy up and down. The way I describe it to my children and the younger children that I work with is to imagine you've got a balloon, your favorite colored balloon, inside your belly. And when you're taking a deep breath in through your noisy nose, so that, you know, prompts them to take a really deep breath, ask them to imagine that air going all the way in, all the way down, and actually blowing up their balloon. And it's so much fun. My son the other day did it, and he added in his own piece and went and popped his belly before he exhaled. And it becomes this really fun, silly game when it's in a neutral, happy place. And then when they are fired up, when they are going through a difficult time, you can say, oh, remember your breath. Do you think that might help? And you can do it with them. Yeah, so there's my piece. I could talk about mindfulness for ages, and it really depends on your situation and what works for your family and where you really are with the whole mindfulness thing. But I promise you, it's not as hard as people say it will be. You don't have to be a certain person or act a certain way to be mindful. And I know it's one of those buzzwords, but it is really super beneficial, and the research shows that it is. It's just about adapting it to what works for you. If anything feels uncomfortable, abandon it. Do the easy stuff, because that's the stuff that will stick. All right, that's been me. I hope you have a happy and bright day.